In this lesson, we are going to graph polynomial functions and talk about their end behavior. So, in the first graph, we are going to graph the function f of x equals x, which is really y equals x. So to graph, we're going to make a table. Let's put in a couple of negative values. So of -2, -1, 0, 1, 2. And since they're equal to one another, we'll have -2, -1, 0, 1, 2. So when we graph, we have -2, -2, -1, -1, 0, 0, 1, 1, 2, 2. We have a linear function. We'll connect with arrows on both ends. So what we want to talk about is end behavior, what's happening on the left side and what's happening on the right side. So as x increases, which means as x goes to the right, the y is also increasing. It's going up. As x decreases, which means going to the left, in this case the y is also decreasing. It's going down. So if we were to have f of x equals -x, we'll put a couple values in. -2, -1, 0, 1, 2. We see that the opposite happens because the opposite of -2 would be +2, and so on. So let's graph that. -2, +2, -1, +1, 0, 0, +1, -1, and +2, -2, connecting those points together, passing through arrows on both ends to show infinity. In this case, as the x increases, going to the right, the y decreases. It's going down. When we go to the left, as the x decreases, we can see that the y is going up, so it's increasing. If we were to do this also with our next function, which is our x squared, this then we will make a table for. And as we had just finished, we'll put 0, 1, 2, 3. We're squaring them. And we know that this is a parabola. So we're going to be at 0, 0, 1, 1, 2, 4. Then we have 3 up to 9. And we know that we could reflect those to the other side to finish our parabola. And we can draw in our graph arrows on both ends, knowing now that as x increases, which goes to the right, that the y is also increasing because it's pointing up. Likewise, as we are going to the left side, as x decreases, we're still going up for our y value. Will still increase. In our next example, we also have a parabola, but this time we want to square it and take the opposite. So when we graph, we have 0, 0, 1, -1, 2, -4, 3, -9. We're going to flip that to the other side. And we see that we have our parabola, but this time it's opening down. So as x increases, which means we are on the right side, y decreases. It's pointing down. As x decreases on the left-hand side, y also decreases. It's pointing down. So what happens if we have a cubic function? All right, so let's make a table for our cubic function. We'll do -2, -1, 0, 1, and 2. When we cube -2, we get -8. When we cube -1, we get -1. Cubing 0, we get 1. Cubing 1, we get 1. And cubing 2, we get 8. So we have -2, -8. -1, -1, 0, 0, 1, 1, and 2, 8. This is the graph of a cubic function. Put arrows on both ends. It kind of looks like an S. It's a little bit bent. As x increases, or going to the right, y also increases, which is going up. As x decreases, or going to the left, y also decreases, which is going down. If we were to switch our function, we would notice that the y values become the opposite, because after we cubed them, we then take the opposite sign. So -2 would be +8, -1 +1, 0, 0, 1 -1, and 2 -8. You can see that this is the same exact function, but it has flipped over because it is the opposite, or the negative of it. This time as x increases, or as it goes to the right, y decreases, which is going down. As x decreases, or going to the left, y increases, or you notice it's going up. All right, what about an x to the 4th function? And this is the last one that we'll do. So it's interesting with x to the 4th. If we do 0, 1, 2, 0 to the 4th power is 0, 1 to the 4th power is 1, and 2 to the 4th power, 2 times 2 is 4, times 2 is 8, times 2 is 16. So we have 0, 0, we have 1, 1, we'll flip that to the other side, and then 2, 16 is off the graph. So, way up, we still have that parabola shape. This is our parent function for x to the 4th. It might have a lot of different bends and curves in, but generally it's going to be the same shape. As x increases, or goes to the right, our y also increases, which is going up. And as our x decreases, or going to the left, our y also increases, which is going up. If we were to do that same function, but would do the negative of it, we would have the exact same thing, but flipped upside down. And again, if there were other values in that polynomial that's to the 4th power, there might be a lot more bumps and curves in it, but it's still going to be the general shape. As x increases, we're going to the right, but the y decreases, it's going down. As x decreases, as it's going to the left, the y decreases also. It's going down. So in general, we want you to understand that if we have an even degree to the 2nd power, 4th power, 6th power, etc., if the a value is greater than 0, it's always going to look like some parabola shape going up. Whether the x increases or decreases, the y increases. And if the a value is less than 0, a negative, then our parabola shape is going to open down. And either way, as x increases or decreases, the y is going to be decreasing or going down. if the degree is odd. So that's a linear function, a cubic function, anything to the 5th, 7th power. If the a value is greater than 0, we're always going to have some function increasing or going up. If the a value is less than 0, we're going to have some sort of shape where it's pointing down to the left, to the right. So we're going to do letter A and then ask you to do B, C, and D as your practice problems. So first thing we have to do is put our function into standard form. So we have negative 2x cubed. We have 3x squared. And we have positive 4x. This is to the 3rd power, so it is an odd function. In other words, it's going to look like a line every single time, but it is negative. So we're going to make a sketch. It's going to go down. Now it's going to have some bumps in it because it's a cubic function, but they will always have this general shape. So as x increases, the y decreases, it goes down. As x decreases, the y increases or goes up. So the first thing you need to do is to write it in standard form. Figure out the degree. Is it an even or an odd function according to the degree? Is the leading coefficient positive or negative? Make a quick sketch, and then you'll easily be able to tell if the x is increasing, then what's happening to the y, and as the x decreases, what's happening to the y. Please finish B, C, and D as your practice problems. After you have finished those, we'll move on to the next. We're going to graph this function. So as we graph this function, first of all, we check if we are correct in standard form, and we are. Then we need to check the degree. It is to the 4th degree, which is even. The leading coefficient is positive. And so since it's to the 4th degree and it's positive, it is going to have a shape similar to a parabola. And that will be very helpful as we make our chart, plugging in our numbers. So what we're going to do is plug in some values. Let's plug in -2, -1, 0, 1, and 2. And then we'll talk about our end behavior when we are finished with that. All right, so let's start with a 0. 0 to the 4th, 0 to the 3rd, and 0 times -5 would be 0, so this would be 1. So if you plug in a 1, we have 1 to the 4th is 1. 1 to the 3rd is 1 times 2 is 2. 1 times -5 is -5. And then we have plus 1. 1 plus 2 is 3. 3 minus 5 is -2. -2 plus 1 is -1. Let's plug in a 2. 2 to the 4th. 2 times 2 is 4. Times 2 is 8. Times 2 we have 16. 2 cubed is 8 times 2 is 16. Minus 5 times 2 is 10 plus 1. So we have 16 and 16 is 32. 32 minus 10 is 22. This would be 23. All right, let's plug in a -1. So we have -1 to the 4th power. We know that that makes a positive number, so that would be 1. -1 to the 3rd power is negative, times 2 would be -2. -1 times -5 would be +5, plus 1. So we have 1 minus 2 is -1. -1 plus 5 is 4. 4 plus 1 is 5. All right, then let's do our -2. So -2 to the 4th power would still be 16. -2 to the 3rd power would be -8 times 2 would be -16. -5 times -2 would be a +10 plus 1. So we have 0 plus 10 plus 1 would be 11. So we're going to graph that. So we have -2, 11. -1, 5. 0, 1. 1, -1. And then 2, I believe that should be 23, meaning it's going to go way off the graph up to the top. So as we graph, we know it's going to have the shape of somewhat of a parabola, but there are some bends and curves because it is to the 4th power. So end behavior, we know that as x increases, the y increases. And we know as x decreases or goes to the left, we know that the y is increasing. All right, please complete the last problem as a practice problem, and then we will go through them.